The salt air clung to my skin like a second skin, thick and unforgiving, as I stood on the weathered porch of my beach cabin, shotgun in hand. The sun dipped low over the Pacific, painting the waves in strokes of crimson and gold, but there was no poetry in my pounding heart. 3 suits, HOA agents, clipboards clutched like weapons, marched up the sandy path toward my sanctuary. "Mr. Harlan, this is your final warning," the lead one barked, his voice slicing through the roar of the surf. "You're in violation of Covenant 17B. Evacuate immediately, or we'll involve the authorities." My grip tightened on the old Remington, the one my grandfather had passed down, its barrel cold against my palm. This wasn't just a cabin. It was my blood, my sweat, my last stand against a world that wanted to pave over paradise. And I wasn't going anywhere. It started 2 years back, in the haze of a divorce that left me hollowed out like driftwood. Elena and I had built a life in the suburbs of San Diego, white picket fence, 2.5 kids worth of debt, and a marriage that crumbled under the weight of unspoken resentments. She got the house, the dog, the illusion of stability. I got the freedom to vanish. I'd always dreamed of the coast, not the tourist traps with their overpriced lattes and Instagram filters, but the raw edge where the land meets the sea without apology. My grandfather, old Jack Harlan, had told stories of it during those long summer nights on his ranch up in Big Sur. "Boy," he'd rasp, pipe smoke curling from his lips, "the ocean don't owe you nothing, but it gives back what you put in, solitude, strength, a place to remember who you are." He'd built that cabin in 1952, a squat thing of redwood and rusted nails, perched on a bluff overlooking a forgotten cove. When he passed, he left it to me, scribbling in his will, "For Harlan men only. Keep it wild." I sold what little I had left from the divorce and drove north, the truck loaded with nothing but a duffel bag, a cooler of beer, and ghosts. The cabin was a relic. Leaky roof, salt-eaten beams, a kitchen that doubled as a bait station. But it was mine. No neighbors breathing down my neck, no covenants dictating paint colors or holiday lights, just the endless whisper of waves and the cry of gulls. I spent those first months rebuilding, not with permits or contractors, but with my own calloused hands. I patched the roof with scavenged tin, reinforced the foundation against the tides that clawed higher each year, and carved out a porch where I could sit with a whiskey and watch the stars punch holes in the velvet sky. It was therapy, raw and unfiltered. The divorce scars faded under the sun's relentless burn. Elena's voice, once a constant echo in my skull, drowned in the surf. For the first time in years, I felt solid, like the cliffs themselves. Word of my little haven must have spread, because 6 months in, the letters started arriving. Envelopes stamped with the ostentatious seal of Crescent Bay Homeowners Association, CBHOA, they called themselves, as if acronyms lent legitimacy to their empire of busybodies. The cove, it turned out, had been annexed into their domain a decade ago, some shady rezoning deal brokered by developers hungry for waterfront condos. My grandfather's deed predated their bylaws by half a century, but that didn't matter to them. The first notice was polite, almost folksy. "Dear resident, we're delighted to welcome you to our community. To maintain our shared aesthetic, please ensure your property adheres to Guideline 4C, no unapproved structures exceeding 200 square feet. My cabin? A whopping $450. I chuckled, crumpled it, and tossed it into the wood stove. Ignorance was bliss, or so I thought. The second letter upped the ante. Certified mail this time, with legalese that read like a threat wrapped in velvet. Failure to comply may result in fines of $500 per day, commencing 30 days hence. I drove into town that afternoon, the closest thing to civilization being a dingy bait shop and a library that smelled of mildew. The county clerk, a harried woman with cat-eye glasses, confirmed what I suspected. Grandfather's title was ironclad, grandfathered in before the HOA's ink dried. "But," she warned, tapping her keyboard, "these associations, they lawyer up quick. Fight dirty." I nodded, thanked her, and filed the deed away in a lockbox under the floorboards. Back home, I reinforced the porch with extra pilings, as if daring the sea, or the suits, to test me. Summer brought tourists, their RVs clogging the access road like ticks on a hound. With them came the HOA's foot soldiers, patrols in golf carts, binoculars scanning for infractions. I ignored them at first, waving lazily as they buzzed by, their faces pinched with purpose. But then came the violations. A solar panel I'd rigged for off-grid power? Unsightly, renewable encumbrance. The wildflower garden I'd planted to attract bees and butterflies? Invasive species hazard. My composting toilet, a necessity in a place without sewer lines? Sanitary violation, potential health code breach. Fines piled up like seaweed after a storm. $200 here, $1,000 there. I paid the first one with a check marked extortion fee, but by the third I'd stopped opening the mail. Instead, I hung the notices on the cabin wall like macabre wallpaper, a testament to their absurdity. It was autumn when things turned ugly. The leaves on the scrub oaks turned rust red, mirroring the blood I felt rising in my veins. A knock echoed one drizzly morning. 3 agents, same as the ones who'd show up later, but greener then, with fresh suits and earnest clipboards. Led by Victor Lang, a weasel-faced man with a comb-over that defied the wind, they demanded entry. "Routine inspection, Mr. Harlan. For the good of the community." I barred the door with my boot, peering through the salt-cracked window. "Community? This ain't your playground." "My deed says otherwise," Lang smirked, adjusting his tie. "Deeds are one thing. Covenants are the law of the land. Sign this compliance agreement, or we'll lien your property." I laughed, a bark that startled the gulls, and slammed the door. That night, I sat on the porch with grandfather's shotgun across my lap. Not loaded, but a reminder. The ocean thundered approval or mockery. Hard to tell. The harassment escalated like a rising tide. Drones buzzed overhead at dawn. There were a mechanical mosquito swarm photographing my every untrimmed shrub. Anonymous calls to the sheriff claimed I was squatting or endangering wildlife with my wood fires. Once they even towed my truck from the access road, citing unauthorized parking. I hiked 3 miles to retrieve it, fuming, only to find a $300 impound fee and a pamphlet on joining the CBHOA family. Family? More like a cult, with Lang as high priest, sacrificing nonconformists on the altar of uniformity. I started a journal then, chronicling each indignity, photocopying letters for a potential lawsuit. Friends from the old life, few as they were, urged me to sell, to cut losses. "It's just a shack, Harlan. Move on." But they didn't understand. This cabin wasn't wood and nails. It was legacy. A tether to the man who'd taught me to fish with barbed wire and laugh at storms. Selling it would be like selling my soul. Winter battered the coast that year, storms howling like banshees, waves gnawing at the bluff's edge. I hunkered down, reading by lantern light. Hemingway, Thoreau, anything that whispered of wild defiance. The HOA went quiet, lulled by the weather, but I knew it was the calm before the deluge. Spring bloomed with vengeance, notices flooding my P.O. box, demanding I voluntarily vacate by May 1st for eminent domain proceedings. Eminent domain? For a public beach access they claimed was blocked by my very existence? I consulted a pro bono lawyer in Monterey, a grizzled vet named Rosa, who chain-smoked and cursed like a sailor. "They've got no leg, Harlan. Historical exemption's your shield. But it'll cost time and they'll make it hell." Hell it was. Surveyors trespassed, staking my land like vampires claiming a grave. Lang's emails turned venomous. "Cooperate, or we'll bury you in court." By midsummer, the bluff was eroding faster than my patience. I'd reinforced what I could, but nature's fury outpaced my efforts. One night, a rogue wave sheared off 10 feet of the path, isolating the cabin like a shipwreck. The HOA seized the moment. On a blistering July afternoon, the kind where the air shimmers like a mirage, they came in force. Not 3, but 5. Lang at the helm, flanked by 2 burly enforcers in polo shirts stretched taut over beer guts, a lawyer with a briefcase like a battering ram, and a videographer capturing it all for documentation. They parked a gleaming SUV at the road's end, trudging up with the arrogance of conquerors. I watched from the porch, coffee mugs steaming in the heat, as they fanned out like a firing squad. "Harlan!" "This ends today," Lang bellowed, waving a sheaf of papers. "Court order for immediate eviction. Your cabin violates multiple covenants, endangers the community, and, post-storm, poses an imminent structural hazard. Pack up or we'll do it for you." The enforcers cracked their knuckles, the lawyer droned about liens and foreclosures, the camera lens glinting like an unblinking eye. My blood turned to lava. This wasn't bureaucracy. It was burglary, sanctioned by ink and ego. The cabin, my grandfather's dream, my refuge, reduced to a line item on their spreadsheet. I set the mug down, slow and deliberate, and stepped inside. The shotgun waited by the door, oiled and waiting like an old friend. I chambered around, not to shoot, God no, but to speak the language they understood, unyielding resolve. Emerging, I leveled the barrel skyward, a thunderclap warning shot splitting the air. The gulls scattered in a white frenzy, and the ocean seemed to hold its breath. "This is private property," I roared, voice steady as the bluff. "My deed's older than your ink. You got no right here. Turn around, or the next one's at your feet." Lang's face drained to parchment, his clipboard trembling. The enforcers froze, hands half raised, eyes darting to the SUV like cornered rats. You can't do this. That's assault," the lawyer sputtered, fumbling for his phone. I advanced, boots crunching sand, the Remington a scepter of sovereignty. "Assault? Try trespassing. Try theft. I've got every letter, every drone photo, every threat on record. You want war? You've got it. But you won't take this without blood on your hands." They backed away. A chaotic retreat. Lang stumbling over a root, the videographer's camera swinging wildly. "We're calling the sheriff," one enforcer yelled, but his voice cracked like dry kelp. "Call him," I shot back. "Tell him how you plan to bully a grandfather's legacy off the map." The waves' roar swallowed their protests as they piled into the SUV, tires spinning sand in a rooster tale of defeat. I fired another round into the surf, harmless, cathartic, watching their taillights vanish down the road. Adrenaline surged, then ebbed, leaving me trembling on the porch. The sun sank, casting long shadows, and for a moment I wondered if I'd gone too far. But then the wind carried grandfather's voice, faint as a whisper. "Keep it wild, boy." The aftermath was a whirlwind of warrants and whispers. The sheriff arrived at dusk, badge gleaming, but his drawl was more drawl than draw. "Heard you sent some fools packing, Harlan." They filed a report, brandishing threats, the works. I handed him the lockbox. Deeds, notices, Rosa's affidavits. He leafed through, whistling low. "Looks like you've been poked one time too many." "I'll talk to the DA. This smells like overreach." True to form, the HOA lawyered up, slapping me with a civil suit for endangering community safety. But Rosa was a shark in pearls. She subpoenaed their emails, Lang's rants about that hillbilly holdout, and unearthed the rezoning scandal, bribes to county officials buried in public records. The press caught wind. A local blogger dubbed it cabin coup, and suddenly I was a folk hero. Protests sprouted at HOA meetings. Neighbors I'd never met, tired of their iron fist. "Free Harlan's Haven!" they chanted, signs waving like flags of rebellion. Court came in September, the gallery packed with sun-leathered locals and wide-eyed reporters. Lang took the stand, sweat beading under the fluorescence, spinning tales of my imminent collapse cabin. But when Rosa projected drone footage, my reinforcements, the wildflowers blooming defiantly, the judge's brow furrowed. "Mr. Lang, you annexed this property without notice to the owner?" The HOA's case unraveled like frayed rope. By adjournment, the judge ruled full dismissal, sanctions on the association for frivolous litigation, and a permanent injunction against further harassment. My cabin stood vindicated, a beacon against the tide of tyranny. Months later, as winter's chill nipped the bluff again, I sat on the porch with a fresh pot of coffee, the shotgun retired to its rack. The HOA had slunk away, their patrols rerouted, Lang demoted to some inland desk job. Elena even called once, voice tentative. "Saw the news." "Proud of you," I hung up gently. "Some bridges stay burned. The cabin endured, patches holding against the storms, a testament to roots deeper than any covenant. I'd planted a new garden, sea thrift and dune grass, resilient as me, and hung a plaque by the door, Harlan men only, keep it wild. The ocean rolled on, indifferent, eternal. And in its rhythm, I found peace, not in victory, but in the fight itself. For in chasing off those agents, I'd reclaimed more than land. I'd reclaimed my fire,